Hello, friends, and welcome to Before the Wheel. Today, my guest is my good friend and my mentor, Ranga. His full name is Ranganatha Ramakrishna. He was my manager in the first IT company I joined after I finished my engineering. He was not just my manager, he was guiding me uh, how to excel in the career, especially what are the fundamentals of the engineering, fundamentals of big data, the tech I was working on. But also, he was guiding me, how to grow in your life, not just in your career. He's one of those rare person that you meet who knows uh, almost everything you can think of. You can talk to him about the war strategy in Europe in World War II. You can talk to him about the economy. You can talk to him about Bhagavad Gita. You can talk to him about psychology, philosophy, and obviously he's the master of his work. So he is now working as a vice president in one of the major IT company in Bangalore, uh, and his core work area is machine learning. He came before on this podcast before. He came on the first episode actually, and on which we talk about machine learning. I will link that video below. And this time we will talk about one of my favorite topic around this time of the year, that how can we excel in our career without killing ourselves. Basically, this is the mid of the year, and I always think around this time of the year that how hard I have to work, how long I have to work to continue getting this salary. And this question, that is it really possible to excel in our career without killing ourselves, is a very long, very famous question. We all go through this. We all think about this question again and again. Uh, that is it even possible to maintain a healthy work-life balance and to maintain that speed or that pace of your career growth? So we'll talk today about these topics to Ranga. So let's welcome my good friend Ranga. So thanks a lot, Ranga. Thanks a lot for taking your time.
Yeah, man. Good to hear you.
So this concept of working hard and working smart, and it led to this conversation, that is it possible to grow in your career without killing yourself? Like that when we are working together, how hard we are working, and when someone out of college just join a company, how hard the person works, and slowly the line between the personal life and the work life diminishes, and ultimately we end up becoming the perfect corporate person. So just want to start with this conversation. Is it possible for a person to excel in his or her career without killing himself or herself?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question and probably the most fundamental question that any professional will have. And the sort of answer I have sort of come to is something like this. You can think it as a say x y axis, like a Cartesian plane that we have studied in geometry. The x axis is the success, and the y axis is the happiness. So basically, everybody is looking for success if he is a professional, and he is also looking for happiness. So when I say success, people are looking for promotion, on-site opportunity. They want to learn new things. They want to get appreciated by colleagues and customers. So that is the dimension of success. Happiness is a sense of well-being, good health, ability to enjoy life, etc., etc. Right? And everybody is trying to find some balance between success and happiness. Now, can you be happy without success? In current society, very difficult. You cannot go and sit in a cave and sort of think you are happy. So, success is essential to happiness. But the point is, at what point success will start eating into your happiness? So, every professional has to find a balance in this XY axis. You need to put a dot in a place where there is a balance between success and happiness, and his life does not become too much tilted either towards the say x-axis or y-axis. Because if you become too much obsessed with success and spend all the time in profession, career, etc., then you don't have any time to enjoy life. At the same time, if you spend all the time enjoying life and don't work and don't learn the emerging technologies, don't update yourself in a world which is going faster and faster because of digital, then hardly after some time you will not have sufficient sort of financial independence to enjoy your say sort of life. So the whole point is how do we find a balance between these two?
Yeah, but when we talk about doing this balance of our work and our private life, there is always someone, around you in your company who can work harder than you, who can work longer than you, who can come office before you come, and who can stay longer than you, right? There's always someone, we have seen that, from many companies and many experience, that there's always many people available apart from you who are willing to and able to put in more time and more efforts. So if you're saying that we need to balance our life and our our personal life, how to basically compete with those sort of people who basically have nothing else to do? For example, if a newcomer, a guy who is not married, he can come to office, maybe just to take shower and come to office because he has no personal liabilities, and he can even stay till 9 p.m. and take dinner in office itself. So how can we compete those kind of people who are basically have this capacity or the ability to just work longer than you, or I would say they work harder than you? Because sometimes the line is very blurred, work hard or work longer, and especially in our industry, it is always very much similar. If the person can is working longer, is working harder, right? So how to compete with those kind of people?
Yeah, so uh, that's again a very interesting question, and like we need to really understand what you mean by the word work, right? So there is no one word called work, because there is work which is routine, monotonous, which can be accomplished by effort. Like if you are cutting tree, of course, if you work for 10 hours, you can cut one tree. Maybe you work for 20 hours, you cut, say, two trees. So that is one definition of work, right? Where it is directly a function of effort. But not all work is defined in as a definition of effort, right? For example, creativity. So creativity does not mean that if you work 20 hours, you will become double creative of somebody else, right? So it is just like saying, if I make a scientist work harder than Einstein, he will invent the next theory of relativity. It won't work like that, right? So even if you make 100 scientists work double the time of Einstein or Newton, there is no guarantee that they are going to come up with the next relativity or the next Principia Mathematica. It won't happen. So what we have to understand is there is a difference between growing old and growing mature. Now, if when you are 10 years experience or 15 years experience, and if you are comparing with a fresher who takes shower and comes to office and works for 20 hours, then I think you are fooling yourself and you are doing a great disservice to yourself, because the dimension on which you need to compete is completely different. So the fresher can work 20 hours, but he does not have the perspective or the view of what has happened in the last 10, 15 years in the technology space, right? So you should not compete on the dimension of effort. You should compete on the dimension of creativity. With every 5 to 10 years of jump in your experience, the level at which you play is completely different. Because initially, when you start, you compete on effort. Probably you are a fresher. If you work more harder than the next fresher who is sitting next to you, of course, you will have an advantage. But after 10 years, if you look at a fresher and say, okay, he's working 15 hours, let me work for 18 hours, I think that would be foolishness. So the plane or the dimension in which you compete, that you need to say sort of switch, and you need to operate at a more creative, productive, strategic level rather than going head on at a just on the brute force effort.
Okay, maybe because I'm keeping this question up about the college freshers, but it's just not about the college freshers. Even the people who are married, who have family, even they are, putting that, amount of work, which is, not just feasible without, impacting your personal life. And we have seen this, many times in, lots of, places that, people who are married, who are have kids, who have family, they are also, willing to, work longer and harder, and they are making those. Small sacrifices and compromises in their life, that the time which they can spend with their kids and their family, they are putting those hours, they are spending those hours in offices. So not just about freshers.
Yeah, correct. I got your question. So what I'm saying is, see, you have to fundamentally think in a different way. For example, you should not start a war which you have not already won. A wise general is somebody who makes sure that he is already won the war and then starts the war. A foolish general is one who starts the war and hopes for victory. Okay, this is what Sansu said, say 2,500 years ago or longer. So what I'm trying to say is you should not compete in a dimension that other people are competing with. For example, there is always a comparison between focus and perspective, right? Some people and focus a lot, and some people can have a bigger vision. So first, what you need to do is you need to identify what is your strength. Okay? Not everybody has strength in every area. Very rarely you will find such a people who are say sort of competent and strong in many areas. So basically, every person will have strength in one or two areas. Like you may have strength in sitting and working on something for 15 hours. Maybe the next person is not able to do that, but he can think the big picture. So what I'm saying is, don't ever fight in an area where the opposite person's strength is there. If somebody is working 15 hours, I'm not sure whether that guy can be creative. Can he think long term? Can he think strategically? Can he write? Can he invent? Can he innovate? Because if you want to be creative, if you want to be innovative, you should take break from your say sort of a routine, and you should be able to spend some time relaxing. Because most of the creative ideas come when you relax, not when you are struggling to complete a particular type of work. Therefore, what I'm saying is identify your strength, find what is useful in the market, and apply your strength in that area rather than comparing yourself with somebody who is killing himself with whatever 15, 16 hours of work. So I'm saying if you go to a race where you are fighting on other person's term, definitely you are going to say sort of lose. So you should define the race in your terms, and then you should run that.
Okay, okay. So let's talk about this theory that you need to put at least 10,000 hours into a skill in order to master it, and not just master it, just to basically to play around with the skill. And we have read this in many books that how Isaac Newton and how Albert Einstein uh, they spent 10,000 hours in their field before they could master it. So how is it possible to maintain a work-life balance and again, put 10,000 hours into your field? Because again, like I said, that there is no way you can excel in your career or in your field without, putting your personal life off balance. So how would you address that?
Yeah. So, see, there are some 4, 5 things that we need to understand, and most of the cases we are having some, say, wrong understanding of the reality. For example, the dichotomy between working hard versus working smart. Now, you cannot work smart unless you have already worked hard. Like many people say that Archimedes was taking bath and suddenly he discovered about density, and then Einstein was playing with soap bubbles and suddenly he discovered relativity, and Newton was sitting under a tree and apple fell on his head and he wrote Principia Mathematica. Now, this is all bullshit, right? Because apple has been falling on many people's head, they did not do anything. Probably everybody is taking bath in the morning and playing with soap bubbles. Nobody invented relativity. So this is completely like something which is not practical, not realistic, right? The actual thing is people are working for decades and decades, and suddenly they come to the realization that they have sort of understood the nature of reality, or they have discovered something in their field. So there is no question of any smart work unless you have done hard work. If you try to do smart work without doing the hard work, that is sort of dumb work, because you will never succeed. Because the base material that you require for mastering any discipline, that has to be sort of earned. It is not something that you can simply get through some tactical step. So hard work is absolutely necessary. And if you take the 10,000 hours, that's what psychologists say, and it typically takes around 10 years to master any discipline for anybody, whoever it is, whether it is Einstein or Newton or Bill Gates or whoever it is. If you look at their say sort of life history, you will see more or less, even if they are called genius, still it took them approximately say 10 years or 8 years to sort of master any particular discipline. So first thing is you can't rule out hard work. A minimum amount of hard work is definitely necessary, but hard work itself will not guarantee success, because along with hard work you also need perspective. So there are two things: focus and perspective. Focus is discipline. It is like laser beam. It focuses your efforts on a particular area, and without that concentration, discipline, or focus, you will not be able to do anything in life. But at the same time, you should be able to see the context in which you are doing this thing. You should be able to connect it to the big problems that you want to solve. You should also have a broader perspective of life of how to apply this problem solving skill to solve some problem which is perceived to be useful by society, in order to make it big, in order to make money, etc. So with every inventor, there is a financier who has to finance that innovation, and if it has to scale, you need not just the innovation, you also need the surrounding ecosystem. So you need both the focus and perspective. It's not about say smart work. It is first hard work and then smart work. And also there is no question of work life balance, because if you had a bad day in office, obviously when you come home, you carry it with that feelings to your home, and you are not able to sleep at night because you had a problem in office. At the same time, if you have a problem at home, you can anyway carry it to office. So there is not two individuals who, after swiping ID card, becomes a different individual. So it is only one individual who goes from office to home and home to office. Therefore, the whole concept of work-life balance is sort of a myth, because it's the same person who is at both the places. Therefore, at some point in the day, say some point in your life, you are focused more on work, and some other point in life, you are more focused on, say, personal stuff. But at the end of the day, you need passion. You cannot be average. Average is dead, sort of, in this world. So you have to have passion, and that passion you carry wherever you are, whether at home, whether in office. So the ability to have a passion, ability to have vision, ability to focus, ability to have a broader perspective of life, and then ability to work hard and the ability to work smart. All these things are key ingredients to be successful. It's not a or condition; it is an and condition.
Right, right. So you just spoke about your passion and that how you need to identify your strength and all, right? But when we enter any industry, right, in the beginning, we don't have any clue what we are good at. The Indian system of education is like that we most of us end up having one degree in engineering, right, and we end up going to IT, and then later on we realize that maybe this is not the field for me, or maybe I can do some other things as well. So as a human being, whatever we put our mind to, whatever hard work we put in some field, we can do good in that, right? So it's very tough to identify in which field or in which domain you are good at, and that means which you are good at naturally, right? And many people spend their entire life without realizing that what kind of job I should do, or what kind of field I should go into to be at my best. So how can we basically fasten that process to identify that this field is not for me?
Yeah. See, this is not a simple question, right? Because life will not go according to what you want to do. Life will happen the way it wants to happen, right? So, for example, the parents for whom you're born, the country in which you are born, the gender with which you are born, absolutely have no control over any of
Right.
these things, right? So, one thing that we need to understand is, you are already dealt the set of cards with which you have to play. There is no choice in I want this. So you are born with a certain genetic makeup. You are bought into a certain family. You are born into a certain cultural context. So there are many things in life which are given to you which you cannot alter. You cannot alter your eye color. You cannot alter your height. You cannot probably alter the amount of intelligence that you already have. So there are certain realities of life that one needs to accept before he starts thinking about other things. So it's not like you have full freedom on whatever you want to do. It is not there, because you are embedded into an ecosystem. So the the most fundamental question is, how do I know what I am passionate about, and how do I make sure I work in an area where I am passionate, right? So this is the fundamental question. So I would say, like if you take marriage, there are two types of marriage, right? Like love marriage and say arranged marriage. But the important word is not marriage. The important word is love, right? Whether you fall in love and then marry, or you marry and then fall in love, it doesn't matter, because as long as love is there, the marriage is successful. Otherwise, whether it is love marriage or arranged marriage, there is no hope for that, right? Similarly, when you are working, um, either you are passionate in a certain area and fortunately you get to work in that area. Say you studied, say, aeronautics, and you really got into an aeronautics company, your core domain, in your campus interview, for example, and then you are okay. But this hardly happens with 5% people, or 10% people, and 90% of the people end up in a job which they did not originally plan. Like I did not originally plan to be in IT, but somehow I got to the campus interview, so I got into an IT company. Now the thing is, passion is something where when you are doing that work, you never get tired, you never get bored, and even you will continue doing that work, even if somebody doesn't pay you for that, because you are so happy with the sheer joy of doing that work. You don't require any external motivator, right? So so when you start working, you have to see whether you can learn to be passionate about the work that you are doing. So that is something that happened with me. So I never planned to be in IT, but the moment I started doing the IT work, and there is no one IT work, right? There are lots and lots of types of IT work. So there is a developer, there is a tester, there is a UI developer, there is a project manager, there is an architect, there is a delivery manager, there is a client partner, there is a sales guy. So if you look at IT itself, there are a number of different roles available within IT. It's just a full cosmos of roles that you can have. And your strength can fit into any one of them. For example, mine was more aligned with playing an architect role because I think broadly and have good communication skills. So, I can sort of be the connector connecting multiple things, which is what an architect should do, and have a vision for the particular project or program that you are running. So, what I'm trying to say is you have to resolve this problem of passion. Either by luck or design, you get into a job where you are applying your passion, or you should learn to be passionate about whatever you are doing by finding a role in your profession, which sort of aligns with your passion, or you can learn the passion. But at the end of the day, unless you are passionate about what you are doing, you will not be successful over a long period of time, because you can't drag yourself for 20-30 years in a job which you don't like. So either get into a job by design where you are passionate about, or you learn learn to become passionate on whatever job you are currently doing.
Right, right. And this is coming from lots of my friends, that I told them that you are coming on my show to ask this question to you. But you sort of already answered that how to work smart, and you said ki first of all you have to work hard, and then you can work smart, right? But there are lots of times that there is no time to work hard. You have to work smart. Maybe there is a project coming when you need to finish between these many hours, so maybe there's some deadline for some work. So this a question came up from my friend, that how can we learn smartly if we can't work smartly, right? So there's some person who takes some 2 hours to learn a particular topic, and there are person who can just skim through pages and do it in half an hour, right? So how can we learn smartly? We know how to work smart. We need to first work hard and then we can work smart. But how can we learn smart?
Yeah. So see, the foundational skill for all the other skills is ability to learn. Okay, and the ability to learn, or what you call learnability, is becoming extremely important because the shelf life of knowledge is decreasing. So if you look at 30 years back, if somebody came out of the college, the general idea was you studied everything that you wanted to study in college, and the next 30 years you will go to a job morning 9 to 5, and then you will retire and have a pension, and that's the end of life, right? So that is not the model that we today it will work for, at least in IT sector, right? Because every 5 years or 10 years there is a fundamental change in the technology, and the next generation technology has a lot of new things which was not there in the previous generation. For example, we went from something like a programming model like COBOL, etc., then to ERP type of a model. Then we came to .com, where everything was web based, and then now we had big data, and then from big data now we are going into cloud, and probably after cloud we will have, say, quantum computing. We are also hit by artificial intelligence. So I think one fundamental thing that we need to recognize is, unless you are able to learn faster than the market, you will be behind the market or out of the market. So learnability is key for every other thing, whether you want to work hard or whether you want to work smart or whether you want to do anything in life. First of all, are you able to learn things which are relevant in the market, which will help you to solve the customer problem? So learnability is key. Now the thing is, how do we learn fast? Now, one constant thing that I hear from people is I read a lot and I forget all those things. So I read a book and after 1 week I can't remember anything that is there in the book. So I learned these thing 6 months back. I attended this course, and now I have completely forgotten. I don't even recognize that I have attended the course. So, so the basic problem is you have this whole point where you are constantly putting effort to learn something, and then it is not helping you because the information that you have understood or you have learned is simply goes away. So the thing that we need to understand is there are two things. One is memorization and one is understanding. Understanding is where you make a model of what you have learned in your mind, and then it is interconnected with other parts that you have already learned, because the mind works like hooks. You have certain hooks in your mind, and whenever you learn a new thing, you have to take and put your learning against that hook. So if you just keep the things in your head without any connection, without any hooks, without any links, after some time it is going to go away. So the point trying to say is there is something called memorization and there is something called understanding. Whatever you have understood, you cannot forget. For example, if I ask you 17 Trisa, probably you may not be able to immediately say what is 17 Trisa. So now 17 Trisa is 51, right? Now I assume that you forgot what is 17 Trisa, but you know that 17 Trisa means adding 17 three times, and that is coming from the foundational knowledge of arithmetic, right? So what you will do, you will take 17 plus 17 plus 17, and then you will add it and you will come to that answer as 51. So what I'm saying, whenever you are learning something, you have to learn the foundational concept, the building block, so that even when you are, say, sort of not able to recollect it, you will be still able to reconstruct it by going through the foundational concept. So as long as you have understood the subject, there is no question of forgetting, because the forgetting thing only happen when you have memorized something. So you cannot forget what you have understood. You can only forget what you have memorized. So, so the thing that I'm trying to say is, as long as you are passionate about whatever you are doing, which will focus your mind, which will give you concentration and attention, and you are completely taking that information. After you took that information, if you connected that information with whatever you already know, you understood the foundational building block, then you will not forget this. And instead of reading 10 books and forgetting all of those after 10 days, it's better to spend a little bit more time and understand the things properly, so that you will have it for the rest of your.
Right. So this question is regarding you. I am always, inspired by the way you read books. I remember you picking a book and finishing the book within like 1 week or something. And I also remember that you used to, pick a book on a Friday evening and used to finish by Sunday evening. So is there a way or a trick to read a book fast? When I read a book, and frankly, I always struggle to complete a book. Somewhere when I read the mid half of the book, I start counting pages. I know how many pages are left. And not just me, I know many people around me that they face the same issue, that because maybe our pace of reading is so slow that we get bored easily. I mean, not bored, but we lose that excitement which we have when we start the book, in the first few pages. So, is there a way to read a book faster, or is there a way to read a book smarter? Because I think obviously there is a correlation between the way you read the book and your natural smartness or intelligence. But is there something which we can do to fasten this book reading?
Yeah. See, our former president of India, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, used to say one thing. He used to say that dream is not something that you have in your sleep. Dream is something which will not allow you to sleep. Yeah. So now, if a person is not able to finish a book, probably he is picking up the wrong book. He doesn't have any passion in that area, and somebody has told him to read that book, so he's forcing himself to read that book against his own wish. So that will never work, right? So you can take a horse to a pond, you cannot make it drink. So the fundamental question here is, why the person is not able to read the book is not the fundamental question. The thing is whether that guy is passionate about that subject, whether he really wants to read that book, or simply he is reading that book because somebody has told him, and rather he would see Big Boss on TV rather than reading that book, right? So the point is, uh, again we come back to the main idea is, what is your goal in life? What is your purpose in life? What is your perspective about life? So, what do you think the purpose of life is? Is the purpose of life learning? Is the purpose of life seeing places? Is the purpose of life enjoying? So, what exactly is your model of life that you approach it with? So, for example, for somebody like me, I think one of the main purpose of life is to learn, because learning itself gives you enjoyment, and by learning you can have other benefits. But the primary benefit of learning is learning itself. You would derive a sense of happiness by learning new things, understanding new things. Whether it can be quantum theory, or it can be string theory, or it can be about anthropology, it can be about psychology, it can be about cosmology. So the world is so diverse, so variegated, and there is curiosity every direction you see. For example, you don't know how a fan works, you don't know why say lightning occurs, you don't know about the history of India, you don't know about history of Big Bang, what was there before Big Bang, what does a black hole do. So if you just open your eyes and look around you, it's a like a curious world, right? There's so many things, and absolutely don't know anything, and learning anything takes so much of time. So if your primary motivation in life is learning, then you will definitely finish every book that you pick up, because that passion will drive you to finish that book. So, on the other hand, your goal in the life is to get promoted, or to get 20% hike this year. Then, obviously, when you're reading the book, you're not focusing on the book, but you are focusing on that 20% hike. And you will not be able to finish the book, because by the time you are halfway through the book, you lose interest and you just drop it and just start thinking about again, how can I get that 20% hike? So what I'm saying is, I'm just simplifying it to some extent, but moral of the story is, find your passion, apply yourself in that particular area, and if your passion is in agriculture, for example, then you should focus on agriculture. If your passion is about learning, then definitely you will not have any say sort of problem in learning. Now this is about the thinking mindset part, right? But practically, so practically, what you need to do. See, first thing is, you should be able to summarize that information, because reading a book and forgetting everything in it is of no use. So, what I generally do, or what I think works is, you should be able to summarize a 200 pages book into 20 pages. And if you look at most of the books, 99.99% of the book, excluding the, say, sort of the masterpieces, which are like totally different category, but most of the books, you see lot of content which is examples, and some funny jokes, and some illustrations, some say sort of ancillary stuff to the core idea. So every book has three, four core ideas, and rest of the thing is filling the pages with some examples or some other stuff, right? So what I typically do is, if I have a 200-page book, I reduce it to around, say, 10 to 15 pages, and over a period of time, say if you have read, say, 50 books in whatever number, 5 years, 2 years, whatever. So you have a summary of these 50 books available to you, and once in a while, if you go through those summary on a weekend, you can simply go through say 100, 200 pages, and that would mean you are covering, say, 20, 25, 30 books. And that will make sure that those concepts, those ideas, say, you carry in your head. So that is one, how to sort of summarize and concise the books, so that you don't forget them after reading them, because the biggest waste of time is reading a book and forgetting all about it. Second thing is, are you applying these things in your work? Because why would you read something and just not apply it in your work or in your life? So the second point I try to do is, not only I learn the core concepts and say sort of look them over once in a while, but also try to see where we can involve those concepts or ideas or the frameworks that you learned in your day-to-day life and in your professional area, because most of the books we are reading is non-fiction books, books related to our profession. So if you are able to assemble and make sure that the information is in your mind, captured in some good way, so that it is not wasted, and if you keep applying those things in your real life, I think you will find a lot of success, and then you will get a lot of pleasure by learning. But the end of the day, you need to decide what is your purpose in life. If the purpose is learning, you will not find any difficulty in reading them.
Right. So on the same line, so we all know that we have a certain, requirement to work in office. We should work from 9 to 5, or maybe some companies maybe even 9 hours. But we generally don't work, in the entire duration of the office, right? We use our personal mobile, we go to washroom, we eat, we chat, we roam, we think. So basically, is it really possible to work in burst of energies? Like I was reading this concept that we really don't work continuously. We work in a burst of time. For example, we focus on for 10 minutes, and then we take a break for 5 minutes. Again we focus for 15 minutes, and then we take for 5 minutes. So does it really helps to break down your work into small chunks, rather than, because whenever we, for example, if I have one work for today, just one task, so by default our mind will try to think, okay, I have the entire day with me, so why I'm worried. Even so, the small amount of the work which should at least take 1 hour, we end up taking 6 hours for that, because we were not just not focused, or because our mind thought that we have 6 hours to work, so it could have expanded that work to spend along 6 hours, right? So ideally it could have been done in 1 hour. So is there a way to basically focus on your work or any task which you are doing to make sure that you are able to finish it in a small duration than you generally do?
Yeah. So there are so many things involved in this, right? Because this is a very broad question, and there are a lot of things. For example, uh, like there is a very nice book by Peter Drucker, who is the sort of creator of this management field itself, the father of modern management, and he has written a very nice book, very small book called The Effective Executive. And in that Effective Executive, the book that he has written, he has answered this very basic question, like if you are an executive and you are in an important role or in any role in any company, how exactly you have to manage your time? What is the skill for time management? Now, there are a few things we need to understand. One, there is certain portion of the time in a day where we need to work with others, and there is a certain portion of the day where we need to work with ourselves. So, for example, if I take my example, I work as an architect, so I cannot simply sit in a corner and keep doing stuff and not connect with anybody on a daily basis. I at least connect to 20, 30 people, because when I'm doing a project or a program, there are lots and lots of people who want to discuss something with me, or I want to discuss with them. So there are a lot of ad hoc meeting, escalation call, issue resolution. So the whole day, like, you are continuously collaborating with people, right? So we work in a collaboration mode. But the problem with collaboration mode is you will not be able to do any creative work, because you will not be able to think any new ideas. You cannot put pen to paper. You will not be able to develop a new model or a concept when you are collaborating with others, right? Because your whole effort or the focus is on working with others. So it is like a room with an open door and a closed door. So sometimes you have to keep the door of the room open and allow everybody to come in, and you have to collaborate. And sometimes you should close the door so that you can work yourself on whatever creative things that you are trying to do. So my advice would be, if you look at 8 hours, you should definitely keep some amount of that time based on your role, 30%, 40%, whatever it is, to work for yourself. And then maybe you keep another portion of the day to work with others. So I typically reserve certain hours of a day, the busy hours, say maybe the 10 to 4 o'clock, to work with others. And before 10 and after, say, 4 o'clock, I generally try to keep the meetings to a minimum, and then work on the stuff that I want to personally work in my role, right? So that is one thing. So how do you segment your time, and then make sure that you have divided it into a collaboration time and a creative time, so that you can work on both aspects? Now, the second point that you need to understand is, uh, generally the minimum amount of time that you need to do anything is around 40 minutes, right? So if you are taking break for 5 minutes after every 10 minutes, you're not going to get anything done unless you are reading a blog or a newspaper article. It's not going to work, because 10 minutes is a too much a short attention span time, right? At the same time, sitting 3 to 4 hours, unless you are really cracking some problem, and automatically it happens 3 to 4 hours, you don't even realize that it is 3 to 4 hours, that is fine. But typically a 40 minutes to 45 minutes is where the brain gets a little bit tired. So a brief walk, a gentle exercise, or a cup of water, cup of coffee sometimes, that will definitely help. But 10 to 15 minutes is too small. working 4 to 5 hours without taking a break is that like once in a while is fine, but on a daily basis is not bad physically, and whatever is bad physically is also bad mentally and say intellectually. Therefore, two things that you should do for time management: have a collaboration time and a creative time. Segment it in your timetable for the day. Second thing is make sure that you work in short bursts of approximately 40 minutes on average, and then take a break of say 10-15 minutes, and then you can say sort of come back and work again.
Okay, okay. So let's talk about meetings. Because we are working in our private sector, we spend a lot of time doing meetings, and a meeting can range, from a 30-minute meeting to a 2-hour meeting. And normally, which I realize that if a meeting is longer than a 30-minute, people generally start losing their focus. And this concept that if a meeting is longer than 20 minutes, basically the meeting is not efficient. This is not the efficient use of time. And if the meeting is longer, people will start losing their focus. They will start thinking about their family. They will start using their mobiles and all. So is it right to have a meeting longer than a 20-minute mark? Or if the meeting is crossing that 20-minute mark or 30-minute mark, that it means that either we are not efficient enough to discuss that topic which we are supposed to in 30 minutes, or there's something wrong with us that we are not able to focus for more than 30 minutes in these long meetings.
Yeah. See, again, see the word meeting, right? So the problem is, see, the world is very, very, very variegated. There is a lot of variety. So, for example, what do you mean by a meeting, right? So there is no one word thing called meeting. For example, I have been in brainstorming sessions where we have been brainstorming for hours and hours and hours, like 4 hours, 6 hours, and we don't feel tired because we are brainstorming. People are coming up with new ideas. We are working with a set of people who are very passionate like you, and there are 6 to 8 people who want to solve a big problem that will make a difference to a customer. So I have attended brainstorming meetings where we have been like 4 to 6 hours going on, and at the end of 6 hours, people feel like we should go for another 6 hours, right? So there is no wastage. We have done like for example workshop. You do brainstorming session. So there are a lot of say sort of meetings which are one end of this spectrum, which are like really focused on generating new ideas, on imagination, on creativity. And there I don't feel any problem, right? 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours, it can go on because people are enjoying and there is something useful that is getting done. See, the other side is the mandatory meetings where you don't want to go. Somebody drags you into that meeting, or you want to join that because your boss will be unhappy, or it's a mandatory meeting that people have asked you to say sort of join. So I think these are the meetings that actually waste a lot of time. And how do you generally sort of escape from that? So there are two, three basic principles that you need to understand. First thing is don't attend meetings that you don't think are required for you, or which is not sort of going to be useful to you. So there is always a way in which you can escape meetings that you are which is not required or which is not useful for you. So I generally make try to not to go into meetings where I am not participating. For example, if there is a meeting where they just give you information, generally nowadays all that is recorded and it is available offline for you to view. So on a weekend or whenever you get time, you can go through that information. So you don't have to sit in a 9 o'clock morning Monday morning meeting just to listen to it. So I only attend meetings where I am going there to provide input. So if you are going to some meeting to provide input, generally it is a useful meeting because you are there out of 1 hour, maybe half an hour you talk or 20 minutes you talk. Other 20 minutes you get feedback, and then you are able to do something. So stop going to those meetings where you are just going to sit as a passive guy, spectator, listening to some information. You can just do it on offline, and you can run it in double the speed in YouTube or whatever it is. You can skip certain sections which are not relevant to you. So the 1 hour information probably you can consume in half an hour if you need that information. Otherwise, you may not even go through that. Second thing is, I think inviting too many people into meeting is another problem. So you have 20 people, 18 people, 15 people in a room, and in generally the first 10-15 minutes is wasted in joking around. before actually getting into the meeting. How are you doing? Where did you go? Etc. Etc. Yeah, that is good. Couple of minutes are fine. But if you get 10, 15 people into a room, 20 people into a room, that joking around goes on for like almost half of the meeting, and then people extend the meeting because they didn't start the meeting, etc. etc. So don't attend meetings that you are not actively participating. Don't get into meetings where are 20, 25, 30 people, because that is a crowd, that is not a meeting. Third thing is, whenever somebody sets up a meeting, first ask what is the agenda, because many times you get meeting invite with only 9 to 10 on a Wednesday. But if you look at the agenda there, it will be written thanks and regards. Of course, you don't go to a meeting for thanks and regards, right? So you just ask the person, you are asking me to join for an hour. What exactly we are supposed to do, right? So generally, I don't go to meetings where there is no agenda other than thanks and regards. See, we are not going to an obituary, so there is no need to go and say thanks and regards in a meeting. So why the hell you are setting up a meeting, right? So that is the third thing, right? Fourth thing is, what happens after the meeting. So you go to attend a meeting, assume that there is an agenda, there is set of action items that we say sort of got at the end of the meeting. What happens to that action item? So assume that there is a person who continuously schedules meeting, and he doesn't do anything about the action items that was decided in the meeting. So why would you go to that person's meeting again and again to waste your time? So it's a combination of tactics, some core ideas that you should have about your time management. But there is no one monolithic thing called meeting. So there are different types of meetings, and based on who is conducting the meeting and what is the purpose of the meeting, what is the agenda of the meeting, what is your purpose in the organization. So some people like meeting because they don't have any work to do. So one of their work is to actually attend meeting, okay, and meet all the people. So it depends upon a lot of things, but I would say these are some 4 5 things you should do.
Right, right. So let's talk about our current situation. So the world went into this pandemic almost 4 5 months back, and India started its first lockdown in March. Now, like we are in almost near to July, and so we were hoping that that IMF would declare that now this is the next recession, which is just on the brink, and we will be seeing huge layoffs. It is happening in US. It's also happening in India on a very small level, but we didn't reach that point that especially in India, that people are getting laid off on a mass scale, right? How do you see it unfolding in the coming few months? That how it will impact our industry, or how our industry will react to this pandemic?
Hmm. See, this is coming back to your previous section about meeting, right? See, this question is not in the agenda. Okay. For example, the purpose of this meeting or whatever we wanted to
Right.
discuss was how to build a successful career
I
without
had to
failing
ask this.
yourself,
This is
right?
the
But
something I need to end with this thing.
yes, yes, yes. I'm just giving you an
Right.
example, a real
Right.
example. So the thing is, now this question is related to what is going to happening in the general world, COVID, IT industry, a very broad
Because
question, right?
I know I can
And
ask you anything and I will get an answer. That's why I told my folks that if you talk to Ranga, there's virtually everything you can ask to him, and you will get an answer. So that's why I knew it. Ki, even though I ask these questions, you will give an answer to me.
yes, 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 I'll give you an answer, but I'm trying to say this is one of the things you should
Right.
avoid. Okay, oh, you should stick to the agenda. I'm just like telling you in a lighter vein because I got a practical example, so I'm trying
Right.
to stretch that
Right.
point.
Right.
So don't misunderstand me. So what I'm trying to say is, as a professional, right, there is one and only perishable resource, that is time, and we should be extremely sensitive about the way we spend the time and the way we take care of the time, because in any organization there is only one paying party, that is the customer. Everything else that we do in an organization is a cost. Only the customer pays for every cost that we incur. Therefore, the way you spend, especially when you are a knowledge worker, the way you spend your time is the most important thing, because that is the only resource that we actually apply. We don't consume any raw material, we don't consume any uh, major other things like plastic, rubber, or anything. Time is
Right.
the only resource that we actually majorly work on, right? So now coming back to the question on COVID and broader implications of IT industry. So, so two, three things are there. Like one is we should differentiate between job and work. Um, so jobs will come and jobs will go, but work will always be there. So millions of people shifted from agriculture into manufacturing, and millions of people shifted from manufacturing into services. Today, if you go to US, the number of people employed in agriculture would be around 3%, and the productivity in terms of agriculture food production is just increasing, right? So there are a lot of farmers who have disappeared, but farming has not disappeared. So the job has disappeared, the work is still there. Still, you need to say sort of
Right.
generate the food for the world, feed the world, etc. Right. So if you look at IT industry also, again we need to distinguish between work and job. Say probably people we had COBOL programmers 40 years back who were doing very well. Today you will have ML programmers who are doing very well. So say people were coding in COBOL. Today people are coding in NumPy, Pandas, Keras, TensorFlow. So what the fundamental point I'm trying to make is there is no shortage in work. The jobs can get migrated from one place to another place, but the only thing is when the say the jobs migrate from COBOL programmer to ML programmer, from the say data center management to cloud management, from installing operating system to running say, cyber security on cloud, whether people can transition from one job to another job, because work is always there. There is a constant amount of work or increasing amount of work always coming, especially because of digitization. So what COVID situation has done, this is my personal view based on what I see, is it has accelerated the adoption of digital technologies to much faster way. For example, if you look at Microsoft Teams, Satya Nadella was sort of commenting the other day that whatever they were hoping to achieve in terms of the number of hours people will use Teams, they have achieved it 2 years earlier, because now everybody started using Microsoft Teams. Digital collaboration, video
Right.
conferencing has become much more prevalent compared to what we were earlier, right? So the reduction in the international travel is say sort of resulted in a concomitant increase in the digital traffic. So the COVID has accelerated the digital adoption. A lot of people are going to cloud because cost reduction is key. So from a work point of view, I don't see much impact on say broader IT industry. But from a skill and the job specification, role definition point of view, of course there is a significant difference, and that comes back to our original point: key passion and learning. Are you passionate? Are you have you learned the art of learning, which is called meta learning? So have you mastered your learnability skill, and are you passionate about whatever you are doing? As long you are passionate and you have the ability to learn, then I think you will have a lot of say good opportunities coming forward. So if you are not passionate, anyway you will not be able to enjoy life, because you can't drag yourself for 30 years. And if you are not able to learn, then anyway you will be out of the market. So passion and learning are the two things that you should focus on.
I think that's the best way to end it. At the end, we started from passion and our interest, and now we are ending on the same note. So thanks, Ranga. Thanks so much for giving out your time. It was wonderful talking to you as always. Whether I talk to you on camera or on personal on mobile, it's always a pleasure. So thanks a lot for coming on the show one more time.
Yeah, same here, Aman, and best of luck to everyone who is here.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks everyone.
Thank. Bye bye.